Yo, what's going on, guys? J.Yumeko here, and today we're back with some more of The Shell Part 1 Inferno. Yet again, another series that we've not seen in a very, very long time. Very overdue. So this is actually the series that if you watched my last video that I just posted, hopefully about 2 days ago-ish, well, actually no, hopefully that I posted yesterday, then you will know that I'm trying to make these videos longer. And so this was actually the game that kind of prompted that, because according to some commenters, supposedly I am just scratching the surface of this game, so they recommended that I make the videos a little bit longer. So, you know, I figured we might as well give it a shot. It's something that's also kind of been on my mind for a little while now, especially with the games that we get into now, how they are significantly longer than the games that I kind of started this channel out on. I mean, hell, for Fata Morgana, we're on part 43. I should tell you enough as is. So, let's jump right on back into it. I can't say I really remember what was going on, but it'll come back to me as we go. Okay, so we get to choose to go somewhere. Where exactly that is, I have no idea. It looks like either we've already gone to Moon World or we can't go there anymore. We can go back to Obergirls. We can go to Inokashita Park, Takashido Clinic, Shinjuku, or Tokyo Metropolitan Art Museum. I think, oh yeah, no. I do remember that we are supposed to be chaperoning a trip coming up for the art club, which our little sister's in, to the Tokyo Metropolitan Art Museum. So maybe we go scout it out, right? Nah, let's do it. Why not? I decided to check out the Tokyo Metropolitan Art Museum in Ueno Park. Though I dropped by Ueno more times than I could count for work to visit Takashido, I never once stopped by the museum. It was a very modern building. This is where they're holding that Something Mamiya guy's exhibit, right?
Oh, yeah?
However, the museum's information guide said nothing of the sort. For a moment, I wondered if I'd gotten the wrong place. Just then, I felt a pair of eyes boring into me. The gaze was coming from the entrance to the museum. Someone who worked there, maybe? Perfect. I could just ask them about the exhibit.
すみません。ちょっとよろしいですか?
It was only when I called out to her that I finally noticed. She appeared to be a foreigner. She cocked her head. Maybe she didn't understand Japanese.
日本語わかりますか?
何?
Eh?
That was Japanese just now, right? The woman gently raised her hand and pointed to the museum's information board as I wrestled over what to say.
3月13日まで改装作業につき閉館か.
So there'd be no visiting this week, in other words.
マミヤなんとかの個展は来週からでいいのかな?
心臓まだ.
心臓がどうかしたのかい?
そう、心臓.
ああ、マミヤ心臓って名前だったか.
The faintest hint of a grin played on the woman's lips when I asked, or at least I thought it did.
ステラ.
ステラ. ああ、それがあなたの名前ですか?
She nodded. I returned to my office only to find Uezomi sitting on the sofa, scowling like he had a stick shoved up his ass.
何勝手に入ってんだ.
てめえを待ってたんだよ。井の頭の仏の身元が分かったぞ。
Uezomi fished out his notebook and read through it.
今村遥、法屋にある大場女学院の学生だ。2月20日頃に失踪したらしい。
I'm gonna take a wild and probably very correct guess. Let me see. And say that that is exactly the girl that supposedly went missing. Imamura. Yep, Haruka Imamura disappeared midway through February. There it is. Unsurprising. Looks like we have a number of new people. Looks like Toko got some new stuff on there. And we have Stella added. Also Shinzo Mamiya. Okay. Growing our list of characters.
やはり出たか.
My worst fears had come true.
確かお前、その学院に出入りしていたよな。
ああ、行方不明者の捜索だった。
解決したじゃねえか。
Uzomi lit a cigarette.
つまりこちらで調べていた件がただの失踪事件ではないということになった。
殺されてちゃそうだろうな。誘拐か？
可能性としてはそうだろ
こっちで今村家を調べる必要がありそうだな。営利目的の可能性もある。
うな。去年有名人の子供が誘拐されたってこともあったからな。
It was also possible the girl's parents were threatened to keep the police out of
し
it.
かし営利誘拐の犯人がここまで遺体をばらす必要があるのか。
身元を隠すためだったのかもしれん。事実今まで分からなかったわけだからな。
だとしたらおかしいだろ。頭が残ってたんだぞ。胴体が出てこない理由は何だ。
The head would have been the first thing the culprit would hide if they'd been trying to conceal the victim's identity.
銅はでかいからな。公園まで運ぶのは面倒だろうさ。
Oops.
それでも頭を捨てた理由にはならない。
Uzomi snorted.
とにかく今村遥の件に関して彼女を殺した奴がいることは確かだ。
So, what did that mean for Yui Nishizono?
俺はもう一人行方を探しているのがいる。西園優衣。彼女も大場女学院の学生だ。
Haruka Imamura's death made it even likelier that someone had gotten to Yui Nishizono, though it was still too early to say, unless her body turned up, of course.
他にてめえの知り合いで失踪しているやつはいないだろうな。
今のところは。
I prayed the body count didn't stack any higher, but something deep in my gut told me this was far from over. Home sweet home.
おかえりなさい兄さん。
ゆかり。
It was almost midnight.
ええ、洗い物や片付けをしていましたから。
Yukari cocked an eyebrow, her face impassive.
それがどうかしましたか？
いや、いつもすまないな。
そろそろ新宿の事務所も掃除に行かないといけないでしょうね。
Yes, it is. It is a fucking mess. Yukari grinned.
向こうはまだ綺麗だぞ。
兄さんの綺麗は当てになりません。
Oh boy. And here I thought just being able to see the floor was good enough.
お茶を飲まれますか？
ああ、そうだな。
Some hot green tea was nice every now and then.
それでは入れてきますので、その間に着替えてくださいね。
I returned to my room and changed my clothes. Yukari came in with a teacup just as I finished tying my sash.
どうぞ。
ああ、ありがとう、ゆかり。
I took the cup, but Yukari just kept staring at my face, never budging an inch.
どうした？
浮かない顔をしていますね。
Yukari worriedly broke her silence after a moment's hesitation.
そうか。
Haruka Imamura's ultimate fate weighed heavy on my mind. It must have shown in my face.
あまりよろしくない知らせがあったのですか？
お前に隠し事はできないな。
My lips curled into a sad smile.
井の頭公園で発見された遺体の身元が判明した。今村遥だ。
そうですか。
西園優衣はまだ行方不明のままだ。なんとか見つけないとな。
ええ、お願いします。
なあ、ゆかり。最近学院の中で何か気になったこととかはないか？
I quickly changed the subject before the both of us ended up going to bed on a dour note.
気になったことですか？
Yukari stroked her chin as she molded over.
最近病気や怪我をして休む人が増えているので気をつけるようにと赤崎先生がおっしゃっていました。
原因は？
さあ、そこまではわかりません。
そうか。ありがとう、ゆかり。
いえ、私にできることなどこのくらいですから。
あと、さっきのことは誰にも言わないでくれるか？
ええ、もちろん。それでは兄さん、おやすみなさいませ。
ああ、おやすみ。
Yukari retired to her room. I decided to follow her example and hit the hay. My biggest concern right now is that Yukari might be put into trouble.
では、私は先に行きますので。
And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the whole, oh, a lot of people are getting sick and or hurt is because of parents maybe being like, there's people going missing at the school and there's not really been any progress on it. I'm gonna go ahead and just, like, not have my child go out there. Yukari picked up her bag.
いってらっしゃい。
兄さんも遅刻してはいけませんよ。
わかってる。心配するな。
行ってまいります。
It seems Yukari had day duty today. Must have been one hell of a workload awaiting her if she had to leave the house before teacher. I helped myself to some after breakfast coffee as I mulled over the situation at hand. Today was Saturday. School was off tomorrow, so I wanted to do all I could there today. At present, I was waiting on Uezomi to provide more details about Haruka Imamura. Thus, my mind was occupied with thoughts on the murder of Kei Koizumi. She hadn't been a student of Oba Girls Academy, but she was about the same age as Haruka Imamura and Yui Nishizono. Was there anything else that connected them? The only possibility that came to mind was that black egg. Why did the killer place that in her abdomen? Since Haruka Imamura's torso was never recovered, we had no way of finding out if her murder involved a black egg as well. However, the cases seemed linked when considering that both of them involved similarly aged schoolgirls with missing body parts.
聞いてみるか。
It must have held some significance, since the culprit went out of their way to remove her uterus to make room for it. Realizing further speculation would only take me in circles, I decided to go to school. Numerous girls in Oba Girls Academy uniforms were also headed the same way. Though some of them appeared familiar, none made any attempt to look at me. Their treatment never failed to tire me out.
やあ先生、おはよう。
Nor did hers.
おはよう、朽木さん。
トークでいいと言ったじゃないか。
Toko pouted.
こんなところで呼べるかよ。
おや、意識してくれているのかな？
Toko pressed her body against my arm like she was hugging it.
お前な。
I tried gently to push her away, but Toko kept holding on like a snake and snaring its prey.
こんなところ見られたら怒られるだろ
In fact, we were already getting some stares from girls on the way to school. And yet, they passed right by us without even letting a single crack appear on their masks, for good or for ill.
おはようございます。
う。ああ、おはよ
Ayumu Sato greeted me before walking right past
う。
us.
ほら、見られただろ。
気にしちゃいないさ。
俺が気
I
に
do,
する。
exactly. I'm not trying to catch a case now. Seriously, what's with this girl?
あ、そうそう。時坂先生、今日の帰りに時間はあるかな？
Toko finally freed me before asking me that question.
帰り今日は土曜だから昼からか。
Do I have time? We'll save, just in case. I've been told that this game is very, like, choices matter, so... Excuse me. Yeah, right? I mean, I don't think we have anything pressing, so sure. Depends why you're asking. Let's do that.
話の内容によるな。何か重要なことなのか？
当然だろ。
None of Toko's trademark wit was anywhere to be found.
そうか。じゃあ、なんとか時間を作るようにするよ。
She looked dead serious, meaning she probably wanted to discuss something important.
ありがとう時坂先生。では放課後、先生の部屋で待っているよ。
Toko waved to me and trotted off, carrying her sketchbook under her arm.
それでは本日の授業はこれで終わりま
That
す。
I ended my lecture once the bell rang. The students had been as cheery as ever. Still, some of them had asked me questions from time to time, so it at least seemed like they were listening. From what I'd heard, there was some sort of stipulation that they couldn't talk to male teachers outside of class. That made no sense, but it was even weirder how they all just readily accepted it. That is very weird. I mean, I guess like it makes sense, I guess, for like an all-girls school, especially with it being supposedly this super prestigious place. But that does seem a little bit extreme. Regardless, no students hit me up with questions or anything after class. At least that explained why they were all so quiet when I encountered them elsewhere. I was passing through the hallways when I caught sight of a familiar face. Perfect. I'd been meaning to talk to her.
佐藤さん、 ちょっといいかな。
何ですか？
The tall girl turned around and cocked her head.
少々話を聞きたいのだけれど。
今ですか？
Ayumu surveyed her surroundings.
ここでは先生に怒られると思いますけれど。
俺だって先生なんだけれどな。
ですが、今は探偵として話を聞くつもりなんですよね。
まあそうなるね。
Glad she was quick on the uptake.
わかりました。何を話せばいいのでしょうか？
そうだな。西園さんのことについて昨日尋ねたこと以外で何か思い出したようなことはないかな。
ゆい。
何でもいいんだ。例えばそうだな、恋人とかそういう人間関係とか。
私が知っている限り、ゆいが男性と付き合っていたことはないはずです。
Ayumu sounded rather sure of herself.
そうか。
Investigating male links to her sounded like a lost cause then.
その他には佐藤さんは黒い卵というものに心当たりはないかな。
I highly doubted she'd have any idea, but I figured it couldn't hurt to ask.
黒い卵。イースターエッグのことでしょうか？
イースターエッグ。ああ、復活祭の卵か。
The Christians celebrated Easter with all sorts of painted eggs. However, black was such an ominous color that the association never even crossed my mind.
ここはカトリック系の学院ですから、春になると復活祭を行うんです。
なるほど。
Makes sense. Yeah, that does actually. I mean, it definitely would make sense because remember that at the beginning of this game, you know, it gives you that little intro bit about the girl trying to, I guess, hatch her mother or something like that. But then again, that whole scene there also pointed at collecting parts for her mother's resurrection, supposedly something like that. So it definitely fits the MO of the killer, because like I suspected in one of my other videos in the series, it seems that they're trying to collect body parts, which is why I think some body parts end up missing, is because they're trying to collect them supposedly to make a new person, something along those lines. So that might be why the egg is such a big deal for them, because maybe they do associate it with Easter, or at the very least this could be kind of a little nudge towards the insinuation that the egg and resurrection has something to do with each other. Easter eggs, huh? I should jot that down.
あと、黒い卵といえば何かあったような気がするんですけれど。すみません。
いや、焦らなくてもいいよ。ありがとう、佐藤さん。
このようなところでこそこそとお話とは感心いたしませんね、時坂先生。
Orihime suddenly called out to me from behind.
月島さん？
授業以外でみだりに男性と話してはならない。先生ならば当然知っていてしかるべきはずですが。
She sized me up like a predator.
いやー、これはだな。
This was bad. I really didn't want to blow my cover if I could help it. Ooh, save again. Save again. I'm gonna fill up most of these fucking save points with this shit. Fib or tell the truth? So, Orihime, huh? I'm honestly not completely against the idea of telling Orihime what's going on. Just because, again, she is this kind of model student, I don't really think she would be, you know, a threat of leakage. With Sato here, it was kind of, it was necessary, obviously, because we needed to gather information. And I feel like if we fib, then it'll kind of put Orihime's eyes more so on us. I really am tempted to just tell her the truth. Well, if I'm trying to process this, because like, well, Listen, what happens with these fucking things is I overthink them, and then I choose one, and it turns out to be the fucking worst choice ever. Listen, Orihime, at first glance, seems like somebody that you could easily trust with this kind of secret. But at the same time, she just seems so easily trustable that I don't trust her. But then I think I have to be overthinking that. Surely it's not that complex. We're gonna tell the truth. I think that really no bad can come from this. I quickly scanned the perimeter to make sure none of Orihime's groupies were around before taking a deep breath.
月島さん、実は俺、例の事件を調べている探偵なんだ。
嘘ならば、もう少し信憑性のあることを言ってもらいたいですね。
信用されていませんね。
いや、まあ、あまりにも唐突だろうとは思ったんだけれどな。これが本当のことなんだ。
本当なのですか？
Orihime's question was directed not at me, but Ayumu.
おそらく本当のことだと思いますが、教頭先生ともそのようなことを話されていましたし。
そうですか。わかりました。あなた、佐藤さんでしたかしら？もうよろしいでしょう。ここはお引き取りなさいな。
はい。
ああ、待ってくれ。このことは言いふらさないようにしてもらえるかな。
ええ。すみませんでした、時坂先生。それでは。
Ayumu turned around and left.
あなたを心から信用したわけではありませんが、今はいいでしょう。
Orihime's brow furrowed.
すまないね。黙っていたりして。だがこうしておかないと満足に調査ができないんだ。
そのようなものなのでしょうね。ですが先生、曲がりなりにも今は教師なのですから、規則を破るような真似は慎んでいただけますか？
わかってる。目立たないようにやるさ。
It definitely wouldn't do to be banned from talking to other students after all.
目立たぬようにですか。
Orihime suddenly heaved a weary sigh.
先生はこの学院についてどう思われますか？
よく指導が行き渡っていると思うよ。ただし、少々学生たちは窮屈だろうなとは思うけれどね。
そうですよね。先生、規則ということには理不尽なものが多くありませんか？
To me, it sounded less like she was asking for my opinion and more like she sought vindication.
それでも規則として決められている以上、守るべきものなんじゃないのかな。
Ah, so I think Orihime is a little bit more rebellious than she gives off.
ええ、当然です。ですが、人間とは理性や感情で動く生き物です。抑圧された空間に押し込められていると、徐々に反発力が強まっていくのではないでしょうか。
Exactly. Preach! Was she truly referring to the students fettered by these strict rules? Or was she talking about someone else altogether?
私だって先ほど佐藤さんに注意したばかりだというのに、こうして先生と他愛ない会話をしています。
別に悪いことではないと思うけれどね。
If anything, I felt this was far more natural. I knew they were nurturing sheltered young ladies and all, but this girl's tradition seemed a little much.
お話が長引きましたね。先生、お引き止めして申し訳ございませんでした。それではごきげんよう。
Gokigenyo. Orihime strutted off as if she was running away from me. Aha, I think I made the right decision there. I'm very confident in that decision. Because again, I feel like, for one, it's really nice now to know that Orihime's not such a stickler for the rules. She does have some, ideas of her own that some change needs to be made around here. But definitely, I think it's going to be good to have her on our side, because while I think there may be a degree of she's so popular that she's unapproachable, I think that if anybody's going to have a really good understanding of some of the social culture around this school, it's going to be her. So that's kind of where I'm at right now on that. Give me 1 second. I'm going to use the restroom, and I may or may not edit this out because I will have a lot of footage to go through. So. We are back. Okay. I returned to the prep room. I could finally focus on investigating since all my lectures were done for the day, but I wasn't even sure where to begin. It was break time at the moment, so maybe finding someone to ask some questions would be a good start.
Yahoo, sensei!
And there she is. Tojiko suddenly swung the door open and barged right in.
どうしたトジコ？
トジコ言うない。
I decided to ignore her belly aching for the time being.
何か用事か？
あ、うん。私さ、1年生に話を聞いてきたんだけどね。そこでなんだか気になる噂が流れてたんだよね。
噂？
噂というよりは、むしろおまじないみたいなんだけれどね。
Tojiko began explaining.
黒い卵を身につけて割れなかったら願いが叶うけど、割れちゃったら黒い聖母がやってきて殺されるって話。
Ah, a black Madonna.
黒い卵。
The same thing that was found in Koi Keizumi's abdomen.
なんか知っと
I
う
think I switched that around. Kei Koizumi.
なあトジコ、その話はこの学院だけで流行っているのか？
どうだろうね。他のとこの子には聞いてないからわからないよ。そもそもどれだけ流行っているかもわからないし。
This could significantly narrow down our populace here for suspects. Because, I mean, you know, because this could easily point at it being a teacher, maybe, if it's within this school. Teacher, student. More than likely a teacher.
西園結衣と今村遥はそれを信じていたのか？
どうだろう。1年生の中でもごく一部だったからね。
そうか。
I recalled the black egg that was in Kei Koizumi's abdomen. Maybe she and Haruka Imamura possessed some sort of connection. If only I had the means to figure out whether she carried around a black egg.
どう先生、私も役に立つでしょう。
ああ、トジコにしては役に立つ情報だったぞ。
だからトジコって言うなってば。
Classes resumed shortly after. I went out into the hallway and poked my gray matter. It was clear I need to gather more information on this black egg rumor. Tojiko said it was known to some of the freshmen, but Ayumu Satos apparently wasn't one of them. And unfortunately, I didn't know any other freshmen. But maybe Dr. Akizaki would know something.
失礼します。
時坂先生、どうかなさいま
Hey,
したか？
Mama. Oh, man. Oh, I'm feeling a little bit thirsty, Mama.
ちょっとお尋ねしたいことがありましてね。
あら、お仕事ですか？
そういうことです。先生は1年生の間で流れている黒い卵の噂をご存知ですか？
いえ、何ですかそれ？
何でも黒い卵を持っていると願いが叶うそうですよ。
よくあるおまじないですね。
ただ卵を割ってしまうと黒い聖母が現れて殺される。
まあ、そんな噂が流行っているのですか？
ごく一部の学生だけのようですが。
So she doesn't know anything either, huh? It would have been a lucky break if one of the students had gone to talk to her about it, but it seemed that lead was dead in the water.
それが事件と何の関わりが？
直接的な関わりは未だ何も。
Indeed. The black egg wasn't involved in Yui Nishizono and Haruka Imamura's disappearances. Kei Koizumi was a different story, but she wasn't from this school. However, both of the missing girls had been freshmen. If I could find a connection between them and the black egg, it'd firmly link all my cases.
私もその噂、それとなく聞いてみることにするわ。
ええ、申し訳ありませんけれど、よろしくお願いします。
The bell rang. It seems classes were done for the day. Where to? Oh, wait, right. I promised to meet Toko. Gotta see what she wants. Guess I'll just stay put and enjoy some smokes until she gets here. Sure would be nice if I had some coffee to go with them, though. Toko entered without even knocking.
待たせたね、探偵さん。
一人か？
And here I thought she'd have Yukari or Toko in tow.
私自身に関する話で他の人を同席させるわけにもいかないだろう。
お前自身の話？
What the hell was I in for?
私の依頼、少しは進んだのかな？
I cocked my head, baffled.
依頼。ああ、自分を見つけてほしい というやつか。
まさか忘れていたとは言わないよね。
忘れてはいないが。
But I hadn't exactly been working on it either.
探偵さんは本業で忙しかったろうから、私の調査が進まないのは分かっていたけれどね。
Toko seemed somewhat glum in spite of her considerate words.
だから今日は探偵さんにもっと情報をあげようと思ったのさ。
情報ね。
Unfortunately for her, I had bigger fish to fry at the moment.
なあ、お前は黒い卵という言葉に聞き覚えはないか？
黒い卵？確か箱根の温泉卵が黒いんじゃなかったかな。
Well, there went another dead end.
ああ、そうだ。箱根の温泉卵は食べれば寿命が7年延びると言われているから5、6個買ってきてくれないかな。
お前な。
We'd seriously gotten off topic.
わかった。話を聞いてやるよ。
Everything else aside, she was still my client after all.
うん。明日は休みだよね。だからうちに来てもらいたいんだ。
どういうことだ？
本当の私を見つけるには私のことを知ってもらうのが一番だろう。
I was about to laugh her words off, but I stopped myself when I saw the look on her face. There wasn't so much as a speck of her usual drollery adorning her countenance.
わかったよ。明日だな。
うん。じゃあそうだね。昼頃に吉祥寺駅の前で待っているよ。
Toko spun around to leave, only to stop abruptly in her tracks.
あ、もし忙しいのだったら無理に付き合ってくれなくても構わないからね。
心配するなよ。大丈夫だから。
ありがとう、時坂先生。
Toko gave me a little bow and left. She is a strange girl, isn't she? The heralds of night dyed the skies orange. Where to? So we kind of have a thing going on here. So I imagine if we stay at Oba Girls, we'll probably run into, Orihime, Ayumu, Yukari, Suzuriko. If we go to Moon World, obviously we're gonna get to talk to what was the fucking name? Toko, I think. Let me open my notes. Let me see what's going on. No, not Toko. Kyoko. There we go. If we go there, we're probably gonna run to Kyoko and her little helper. Kishida Park, I imagine that's also someplace we might run into Yukari, maybe the detective, maybe Toko, either one of the Tokos. Takashiro Clinic, we're gonna run into the crazy lady, the hot crazy lady. Shinjuku Station, I think that would probably just take us back to work. And we could also run into Stella at the Metropolitan Art Museum. So we definitely have some options here. Well, obviously I'm gonna go ahead and make my visit to Moon World, because, for obvious reasons. I arrived at Moon World. The coffee here was always the best. However, I found myself faced with unprecedented hustle and bustle as soon as I opened the door. Hasane turned to me as she raced through the cafe with trays in her hands.
なんだか慌ただしいな。
それが急にお客様がたくさんやってきまして、すみません、すぐにお席を用意しますね。
焦らなくとも大丈夫だよ。
Man, I haven't seen the joint this busy in ages.
京子。
The counter was unoccupied. I'd assumed she'd be handling customers alongside Hatsune, but she was nowhere to be found.
お待たせしました、時坂さん。こちらへどうぞ。
雨宮さん、京子は？
京子さんは今買い物に出かけてて、そしたら
Oh,
急
she's
に
all
お
by
客さんが。
herself. Hatsune was clearly at her wit's end.
コーヒーももうそんなに残っていないのに。
Let's help her out. Come on, we gotta help her out here. I couldn't just sit back and watch. Not when Hatsune was acting like she had the weight of the world crushing
雨
her.
宮さん、俺も手伝うよ。
そんな、お客様に悪いですから大丈夫です。
コーヒーの入れ方くらいは心得ているさ。
I got behind the counter and checked the equipment. It was all fairly standard issue, so I quickly realized I'd have no trouble navigating it. I boiled the water, readied the coffee grounds, and positioned a nail drip with water in it.
雨宮さんは菓子を用意して。そっちはまだ残っているんだろ？
あ、はい。
Phew. Good thing their menu's so small. I poured boiled water into the ground's drip. My coffee couldn't even dream of matching Kyoko or Yukari's, but it wasn't half bad.
雨宮さん、できたよ。
Hatsune took the pot of fresh coffee and raced around, delivering it to its intended recipients. Crisis averted. What a relief. I poured the coffee into another pot, made myself a cup, and circled around the counter. A tinge of bitterness stung my tongue after I took up my usual seat and sipped my drink.
まあ、悪くないな。
The customers gradually filtered out, restoring peace and harmony to the cafe.
助かりました、時坂さん。ありがとうございます。
いや、俺は全然構いやしないよ。それにしても京子のやつどこまで出かけたんだ？
I thought she knew better than to leave the cafe in the hands of a new hire.
京子さんを責めないでください。私が大丈夫ですからって言っちゃったんです。
Regret warped Hatsune's countenance.
それにしてもな。
All of a sudden, Kyoko burst in.
初音ちゃん、ごめん。大変だったでしょ。
おい、京子。
Hatsune grabbed my sleeve before I could chew out Kyoko.
全然平気でしたよ。時坂さんが手伝ってくださったんです。
時坂くんが？
お前が雨宮さんを一人で放っておくからだぞ。
ええ、時坂くんもごめんなさいね。迷惑かけちゃったみたいで。
済んだことだからいいけれどな。
Griping wouldn't have been fair on her. Kyoko manned her station behind the counter.
初音ちゃんがコーヒーを入れたの？
いえ、時坂さんが入れてくださいました。
Kyoko poured herself a cup and took a sip.
ちょっと薄いかしら。それに少しえぐみが残ってるわね。
お前な。
でもうちの味にかなり近いわよ。やるじゃない時坂くん。
It felt like she just robbed me of my one chance to complain. Once things settled down, a question suddenly came to mind.
そうだ。雨宮さん、ちょっといいかな。
初音でいいです。まだ慣れてなくて。
そうなのかい？
はい、ずっと名前で呼ばれていましたから。
うん。では、初音くん。一つ聞きたいことがあるんだけれど、黒い卵という言葉に心当たりはないかい？
黒い卵ですか？すみません。よくわからないです。
Hatsune sounded quite apologetic.
いや、いいんだ。知らないのならそれでいいさ。
The fact that Hatsune didn't know meant the rumor had likely only spread amongst a select few.
京子はどうだ？
That's what I'm thinking. Still, I asked Kyoko just to be safe.
私？温泉卵？
お前に聞いたのが間違いだったよ。
何よ。聞いてきたから答えただけじゃない。
I ignored Kyoko's pouting and got up.
それじゃ、また来るわ。
Well, hey, maybe let's not completely rule out the hot springs, okay? That might still come back as relevant later on. Okay. Let's see, where to go. Let's go to... I'm tempted to go here just so we can talk to Stella more. But... let's go to Obergirls. I don't think we typically go there. This is only like the second time I've actively chosen this. I went back to Obergirls Academy. Why, you ask? To visit Dr. Akazaki. She said she was going to inquire around about the black egg, so I wanted to ask if she'd heard anything. While I knew I was being impatient, I was desperate for whatever straws I could grasp at this point. I reached the infirmary and was about to knock when a student suddenly exited from within. She passed right by me with her head dropped. The faint whiff of sweat tickled my nose.
失礼します。
Huh. Dr. Akazaki. What the fuck? fuck are you doing? I froze up the moment I stepped inside.
あらあら、まずいところを見られてしまったわね。
Dr. Okazaki was undressed for some reason. That, plus the sweat from before and the air sultry with feminine musk, more or less confirmed what had happened in here. Okay, so not only are we banging students, but you're both women and you're banging, and there's so many levels to this. Who would have thought that the lustful school nurse would be banging her own students? Not just any students, female students. Yeah, I'm not gonna just sit here and act like I didn't say anything. What's going on?
何をしてるんですか？
悩める少女の相談に乗ってあげていたのよ。
Nene's voice held not a hint of shame.
とてもそうは見えませんでしたけれどね。
では、時坂先生にはどう見えましたかしら？
She glanced seductively at me.
行き過ぎではないですか？悩み相談で体を重ねる必要はないでしょう。
あら、本物よりも先生らしいことを言うのね。
Nene giggled. we're
時坂先生にはわからないかもしれないけれどね。
yes, you're fucking students. You are okay. Let's give her an immensely large benefit of the doubt and say that maybe she's trying to help students, oh, it's an only girls academy, they only see other women, they probably aren't even allowed to interact. They're literally not allowed to interact with boys. Maybe she's helping with their sexual needs. This is too far.
俺が口出しすべきことじゃないのは確かだな。
あなたもする？
Nene flaunted her chest to me.
いえ、丁重にお断りさせていただきますよ。
I didn't have the time, energy, or obligation for that.
あら、遠慮しなくてもいいのに。
そのうち、ゆっくりとできる時間ができたら、お相手いたしますよ。
楽しみに待っているわ。
It only hit me after I hightailed it out of there that I'd completely forgotten about my initial goal.
参ったな。
But honestly, I didn't have the courage to venture back in there. And so I decided to save my questions for next time and assume she still hadn't learned anything. Yeah, that worked. That made perfect sense. We're just gonna ignore that? We're just gonna ignore the fact we walked in on this fucking teacher who literally just got finished banging a student. We're just gonna ignore that. I mean, what? What? Huh? That's one hell of a revelation. I would have never even guessed that. For one, I wouldn't have even guessed that it was going on. I wouldn't have been surprised if it was going on, but I certainly did not expect it to be fucking the female Okazaki. Well, let's just hope Yukari is not paying any of those kinds of visits, right? The sun had already set by the time I returned home.
あら兄さん、お帰りなさい。
ああ、いろいろとあってな。飯は？
心配せずともきちんとありますよ。
Yukari smiled as she brought several steaming plates of food over from the kitchen.
そういえば、先ほど魚住さんからお電話がありました。もう少ししたらこちらにお越しになるそうです。
魚住が？
For a moment, I wondered if some new info had turned up. But whatever the case, dinner came first. I probably wouldn't have the time or stomach for that once he arrived, after all. Unfortunately, I didn't get as long to relax after dinner as I'd hoped.
兄さん、魚住さんがお見えになりました。
そうか。今に通してくれ。
はい。
I made my way to the living room right after Yukari entered the door.
おーレジ、邪魔するぜ。
何か分かったのか？
まあ、分かったというか、分からなくなったというか。
もったいぶらずに話せよ。
ああ。井の頭公園で見つかった仏だが、どうやら今村遥だとは断定できないようだ。
なんだって？あれは夏目さんが調べただろう。
彼女が調べた後、監察医務員に収容されてもう一度調査をしたんだが、
異なる結果が出た。そういうことか。
腐敗が進行していて断言はできないそうだがな。生前の今村遥の所持物に付着していた指紋と一致しなかったらしい。
だが夏目さんは顎の骨格から今村遥だと判断していたぞ。
歯の治療跡でもありゃ確実だったんだろうがな。
Uzomi finished his report with his face all bunched up. See, I'm saying, it's very, very possible all those body parts weren't actually hers. So it could have been Imamura's jaw, but there's absolutely no telling if those were her arms or her legs or, you know, her torso if they even found it, if they even do find it. Right? Because again, this guy's nitpicking body parts. So when he throws them all out, he probably throws them all out in mass.
別人の遺体の可能性か。
そっちの不明者についても捜査中なんだが、何せ物証がない。現住所に警官を向かわせたんだが、もぬけの殻だった。
待て、どういうことだ？
西園優衣の母親は昨年の秋に亡くなっている。これについては過労による急性心不全で事件性はない。
So she's vulnerable. Uzomi put a cigarette in his mouth.
警官が行くと自宅の中はきれいに片付けられていたというわけだ。自発的な蒸発、そう考えられている。
指紋も出なかったのか？
自分の痕跡を一切残したくなかったのかもしれんな。
That is weird. So, damn, that is weird. No fingerprints at all in her place. So either she cleaned her house very thoroughly and then left without leaving any fingerprints, or the killer went back and cleaned up the entire house to make sure there were no fingerprints left. Yuna Shizona disappeared in January, shortly after the start of the year. If she'd vanished on her own terms, that would mean her disappearance likely had nothing to do with this case.
可能性として残しておいた方がいいな。
かもしれねえな。
I lit a cigarette and filled my lungs with smoke.
それにしても、結局どちらの事件も俺が調べる羽目になってるんじゃないのか？
俺だって調べてるぞ。それにバラバラの方をてめえが調べてるのはそっちの由来があったからだろう。
そんなこと分かってるさ。
A dismembered body that was once judged to be one of the people I was looking for. A buried body with a burned foot and a black egg in its abdomen. Things would have been far easier if we could find some link between the two.
若い女。
That was the only common fact that we knew of thus far. Though one of the corpses had gone back to being a Jane Doe, that didn't change the fact that they were both female students who were around the same age.
なあ、魚住。行方不明になっている女学生は他にいないのか？
売春防止法がそろそろ施行されることもあって減ってはいるようだが、それでもまだ失踪者は多い。
行き先は赤線青線だけじゃないだろうな。進駐軍相手の売船もあるか。
当然犯罪に巻き込まれているのも多いはずだ。
なあ、今後もこんな殺しが続くと思うか？
そうならんために俺たち警察は動いているんだ。
Uzomi scowled and brutally stubbed out his cigarette. There's a lot going on, isn't there? Got a killer on the loose. It may or may not be connected with the missing students. The fucking, you know, we have these black eggs. One of them's been burned. One of them's been dismembered. One coroner says it's this girl. The other says, actually, no, it's not. One of the girls has just gone up and missing, left no fingerprints behind in her own house. And, you know, the fucking school nurse is banging the students. So, you know. I woke up feeling all out of whack. Last night, Uzomi and I hit the bottle after our little chat. He only ended up leaving around dawn. Thanks to that, I was out like a light until this afternoon.
おはようございます、兄さん。
ああ。
He doesn't look too happy.
ずいぶんと遅くまで飲んでいらしたようですね。
うるさかったか？
いえ、そんなことはありませんけれど。
Yukari seemed crabby. So he kept her up, huh? I sighed and sipped the tea she had brought me. Fortunately, I didn't have a hangover, as far as I could tell. I didn't even want to imagine what choice comments she would have from me if I showed up with a katzenjammer.
さて
I rose up to my feet after checking the time.
あら、書庫にこもるんですか？
いやちょっと出かけてくる。
そうですか。いってらっしゃいませ。
ああ
The first thing I saw after arriving at Kichijori Station was a rather miffed Toko.
遅いよ時坂先生。
遅いと言われてもな。詳しい時間を指定してこなかったのはお前だろ。
レディーを待たせてはならないよ。男ならば先んじで待っているという器量を見せなくてはね。
勘弁してくれ。眠いんだ。
私とデートするのがそんなに待ち遠しかったんだ。
いや朝まで飲んでいた。
最低だ。
Well, I couldn't argue with that assessment.
こっちを通っていた方が早いんだ。
Toko led me to Inokashita Park.
本当は三鷹駅から歩いた方が近いのだけれどね。
She skipped through the park as gracefully as a ballerina, her vexation having vanished into thin air.
そういや、最近はこの辺りでも物騒な事件が頻発しているらしいね。
知っていたとしても話せるはずがないだろう。
守秘義務というやつだね。
Toko nodded in understanding.
今年に入ってすぐそこの町工場で発砲事件があったし、ついこの間にはここで誰かが殺されていた。
お前も気をつけろよ。
私は大丈夫。だって探偵さんが守ってくれるんだろ。
Yep. You got that right. We exited the park and strolled by the Tamagawa Aqueduct until we wound up at a grand Japanese-style residence.
ここが口利家さ。
随分と大きいんだな。
祖父が病院の院長だからね。この建物にも診療所があるんだけれど、そこでは今おじが働いているんだ。
診療所まであるのか。
No wonder it was so big then.
さあ、探偵さんどうぞ。
I parked myself on a floor cushion in the Japanese-style room she escorted me to.
少々待っていてくれないかな。今お茶を入れてくる。
Toko left as quickly as she dropped in. I did as I was told and took stock of my surroundings. There was a marvelous garden right out the window that momentarily ensnared me with its beauty. Speckles of color painted the trees in the form of tiny blossoms, serving as harbingers of spring. This place seemed rather ancient. Fortunately, it appeared to have been spared by the air raids that had ravaged the area over a decade ago. But even without all that history, the residence radiated an air of tranquility.
黄昏れているね。
Toko returned.
いいところだな。
そうだね。
She'd brewed tea in a porcelain pot.
カステラもあるけれど食べる？
Sure.
せっかくだからいただこうか。
I drank my tea while chowing down on the thin rectangular pieces of sponge cake. I almost felt like a nobleman drinking in the parlor of some wealthy count or duke. Toko cut up her sponge cake with a toothpick.
食べ物を粗末にするんじゃないよ。
ちゃんと食べるよ。お父さんみたいなことを言うんだね。
お父さんってな。
I didn't think I was that much older than her.
私は父さんのこと知らないから。
Toko dropped that bombshell without any prior warning.
今母さんは出かけているけれど、ここで生活しているのは私と母さんとおじさんだけ。父さんのことは全然覚えていない。
Her profile was clouded with a shade of sorrow.
ああ、そうか。父さんのことだけじゃないな。小さかった頃のことは何一つ覚えちゃいないんだ。
Toko blankly stared at me as though she'd only just remembered that.
それが俺に見つけてほしい本当の自分という部分なのか？
どうだろう。
Toko cocked her head after giving me that vague answer.
そんな単純なことじゃないような気がするんだ。もっと、ほら、なんて言うのかな。
まあ小さい時のことを覚えていないのは珍しくないよ。戦争もあったからね。
だからかな。
She gazed right into my eyes. The unyielding confidence behind those long slits of hers was gone, replaced with a look of fear akin to having your back to a cliff.
ねえ、時坂さんのことも聞かせてよ。
俺のことなんか聞いたって面白くもないだろ
そんなことない。興味あるよ。どうして探偵になったのかとかさ。きっと想像を絶するような理由があると思うんだ。
Toko's melancholy had petered out, her eyes gleaming with the sort of curiosity that killed cats.
う。残念ながらそんな大層な理由はないよ。警官をやっていた流れでそうなっただけだから。
時坂さんが警官だったなんて想像もつかないな。
そうか？
うん。だって先生やってる時だって似合ってなかったから。
Well, why do you think I quit the force, huh? Meanie.
それは全然違うだろ。
Toko giggled, a light smile on her face.
ねえ時坂さん、探偵になってよかったと思う？
仕事がある分にはいいんじゃないかな。
そうじゃなくて、探偵でよかったと思うことはある？
いいことも悪いこともあるさ。まあ今のところ悪いことの方が少し多いかもしれないけれどね。
そうなんだ。例えばどんなこと？
Toko bent forward, her face looming closer to mine by the second.
人の死に触れることが多すぎる。
Though maybe that was my fault for only ever taking on violent cases.
警官だった時は事件が起きてからじゃないと動けない警察にはがみしていたんだが、事件が起こらないと依頼は来ないんだ。
探偵といえば颯爽と現れて難事件を解決する人だと思っていたけれど。
それは小説の中での話さ。明智も金田一も現
Holmeses of
実にはいないん
Poirot.
だ。警察も探偵も事件を止めることはできても事件を防ぐことはできない。
Indeed, only the police can do that.
つまりいつも俺はゴテゴテさ。
警官だった時何かあったんだね。
ああ、
I had no idea why I was unloading so much onto her, but I didn't feel like stopping.
恋人が殺されたんだ。警官だった時に。
そう。
Toko studied my face.
だから時坂さんは寂しいの？
I turned away, unable to bring myself to look her in the eye.
あ、
Toko suddenly darted back.
母さん、帰ってきたみたい。
She got up and left the room. I took a deep breath to calm myself down. Just what was with that girl? It felt like she'd seen a part of me that even I hadn't noticed. Lonely? Me? Ridiculous. Toko returned after a short while.
時坂先生、お待たせ。
She brought a willowy woman in a kimono with her.
いつも娘がお世話になっております。母の千鶴でございます。
どうも、オーバー女学院の時坂です。
A pregnant silence followed our pleasantries. Unlike Toko, this woman seemed ready to kneel over at any moment. Or at least, that was how it looked to me.
では、どうぞごゆっくりしていってくださいませ。
いえ、そろそろおいとまさせていただこうと思っていたところでして。
そうですか。では、今後とも瞳子のことをよろしくお願いいたします。
Chizuru bowed her head. But there was something almost apathetic about that gesture. It wasn't because she was cold to Toko, or that her greetings and farewells were empty formalities either. No, it was more like she lacked something altogether.
先生を送ってきます。
Toko's voice brought me back to my senses.
よかったらまたいらしてください。先生。
ええ、また機会がございましたら。
Toko dragged me out of her house.
なあ、
仲が悪いわけじゃないよ。
Toko beat me to the punch.
どう接したらいいのかわからないだけさ。お互いにね。
She was so curt and direct that it almost sounded like she was reading straight from a book.
時坂さんのところはうまくいっているみたいだね。
うちはまあゆかりのやつがしっかりしているし、親もいないからな。
私もしっかりしているつもりなんだけれどな。
Toko scrutinized my face carefully.
時坂さんはどう思う？
どう思うって。夜中にふらふらと公園を散歩しているのはしっかりしているとは言い難いぞ。
時坂さんだってフラフラしていたじゃないか。
Toko pouted after saying that.
俺はいいんだよ。
ほんと、大人ってずるいよね。
She sounded less envious and more exasperated.
トウコちゃん
Suddenly, I heard a man calling out from a distance.
あ、おじさん。
Toko and I turned around in almost perfect sync. A moment later, I found myself face to face with this uncle of Toko's. He looked to be about my age.
はじめまして。時坂先生でよろしいですか？僕は彼女の叔父にあたる朽木文也です。
Fumiya politely held out his gloved left hand.
ええ、よろしく。
I nodded and cordially accepted the handshake.
お話はいつも彼女、トウコちゃんから伺っています。何でも学園にとても面白い先生が来たとか。
どういうことを話したんだ？
I shot Toko a glare, but she was just as quick to make a show of looking away from me.
おじさん、診療は終わったの？
ああ、うん。まだカルテの整理やらやらなくてはいけないことは残っているけれどね。
Fumiya feebly smiled. He seemed rather exhausted.
診療所はお一人で？
ええ。以前は父が診察していたのですが、今は中野に大きな病院を建てまして、そちらにいるんです。僕はどうも大病院というのが苦手でして、こちらの方が性に合っているんです。
大きな組織は窮屈に感じる時もありますからね。
それに僕が治療しなくてはならない患者もいますからね。
これ以上おじさんの邪魔をするわけにもいかないし、私は先生を送ってきます。
Toko suddenly seized my arm.
一人で帰れるから大丈夫だぞ。
いいから、それじゃおじさん。
またいらしてください、時坂先生。
I heard Fumiya's voice fade into the distance as Toko hauled me away from her residence. It was only after we retreated into Inokashita Park that Toko finally let go of me. By that point, it was already dark out.
どうしたんだ、急に。
ねえ時坂さん、今日のこと誰にも言わないでくれないかな。
Toko didn't even try to look me in the eye.
俺は探偵だぞ。依頼の内容を他人に話すはずがないだろう。
She clearly had a lot going on. What with her home situation, plus the job she'd entrusted to me.
うん、そうだね。それは分かってるんだ。
Toko nodded over and over, head still drooping.
お前の依頼はちゃんと果たしてみせるさ。いつになるかはわからないけれどな。
うん。ありがとう、探偵さん。
It was then that Toko finally smiled at me.
あ、月が出てる。すごく細いね。
Toko must have only just noticed it.
寒くないか？
大丈夫だよ。
Said the girl, huddling into me for warmth.
月は寂しい人にはとても優しいんだ。
Toko muttered in a sing-song voice, puffs of white breath dancing out of her mouth onto the wind.
どんなに沈んでいる時にだって月は柔らかな光を投げかけてくれる。強すぎず弱すぎず優しく包み込んでくれる温かな光を。
Her fingers brushed my cheeks.
時坂さんは寂しいの？
It was the same question she'd asked earlier, and yet I still didn't have an answer for her.
寂しさを感じない人はとてもかわいそうだよ。
Damn. Her eyes never strayed from me.
だから時坂さんだって寂しさに対して罪悪感を覚えることはないよ。
寂しかったのはもう昔の話さ。
I gently grabbed Toko's wrist and pulled it away from my cheek.
ユキコが殺された時は 随分と荒れていたからな。それで警察を辞めて、周りにもだいぶ迷惑をかけてしまったよ。
Yeah, I was an absolute mess back then. I spent days wandering the city hunting for Yukiko's killer, but I never found him, so I merely wasted away into a shadow of myself. Uzomi, Takashido, Yukari, and Kyoko were at a complete loss over what to do with me.
俺がいつまでも悲しんでいたところで、ユキコは帰ってこないんだ。
Indeed. Yukiko's death had imbued my life with a mission I couldn't afford to abandon. Ever.
時坂さんは強いんだね。
Toko looked down, her voice hardly even a whisper on the wind.
強くはないさ。かけがえのない人を亡くした痛みはずっと残っている。でもそれを言い訳にして殻に閉じこもっていたくはないからな。
やっぱり強いよ。私はずっと殻の中にいるようなものだから。でもね、
Toko raised her head.
時坂さんと私は、そう、私たちは同じなんだ。
Her voice rang like a bell, chiming in my ears.
あそこは私の本当の居場所じゃない気がするんだ。だから私は。
Suddenly, Toko stopped herself.
だから
ううん、なんでもないよ。
She quietly shifted away from me.
じゃあ、時坂先生、もう遅いから私は帰ることにするよ。
おい。
I called out to her before I even knew what I was doing.
なんだい？
気をつけて帰るよ。
That was all I could bring myself to say when I gazed into her eyes.
うん。
I didn't want to head home immediately after seeing Toko off, so I roamed the streets of Kichijoji without any regard for my destination. What did Toko and I have in common? Her words kept replaying in my mind over and over again like a broken record. Was it because she said she was also lonely? She'd also mentioned it felt like she didn't belong at that house. If so, then maybe her issues with her mother were the root of everything. That would complicate things. I wasn't the type built to butt into family matters for no reason. Eventually, I stumbled into Moonworld. It seemed that was what my subconscious associated with strolling around Kichijoji. Figuring a little visit couldn't hurt, I opened the door.
あら、いらっしゃい。
Kyoko was mopping the floor. God forbid I walk in and Kyoko's fucking there naked with Hatsune, right? Like, Jesus Christ. Yes, I'm going to cling on to that this whole fucking video. Trust me.
珍しいな。お前が掃除してるなんて。
今日は日曜日だから、初音ちゃんはご実家に帰っているのよ。
もう閉めるのか？
そうだけど、いいわよ。時坂くんだったら。
Kyoko leaned the mop against the wall by the front door and manned the counter.
どうしたの？
何がだ？
顔に出てるわよ。眉間にシワが寄ってる。何か考え事？
大したことじゃないさ。少し昔のことをな。
Kyoko abruptly froze.
ユキコのこと？
Kyoko spoke cautiously like she was walking on eggshells, but I simply nodded nonchalantly.
もうすぐ7回忌だものね。
ああ。
It was truly stunning how fast time had flown.
コーヒー飲む？それともお酒の方がいいかしら？
Kyoko hastily shattered the transient quietude. She never was one for awkward silences.
コーヒーを頼む。
I just couldn't find it in myself to consume any alcohol tonight.
ちょっと待っててね。京子さんのスペシャルブレンドを入れてあげるから。
Kyoko began brewing the coffee. Incidentally, this special blend of hers was probably just ordinary Moonworld coffee. She'd been through a heart-trending tragedy of her own. Well, not heart-trending, but a heart-rending tragedy of her own. Yet she'd done a fine job getting back on her feet.
なあ、京子。
何？
Kyoko kept working on the coffee as we conversed.
君は寂しくはないのか？
She'd lost the love of her life and her best friend. But here she was, living with her head held high.
何言ってるのよ。
Kyoko looked up and flashed me a profound smile.
このお店にはしょっちゅう時坂くんも魚住くんも来るし、今は初音ちゃんもいるしね。これで寂しいだなんて言っちゃバチが当たるわよ。
そうか。
Oh, he was gonna say something. Toko had said the same to me, but she was sorely mistaken.
寂しさを感じないのはかわいそう。
似合わないわよ。時坂くんにそんなかっこいいセリフは。
知り合いの受け売りだよ。
I was sure Kyoko was lying about not being lonely. The difference between us was merely that she'd gotten over it. She turned those harrowing days into just another chapter in her life.
寂しさは何とかして紛らわせるのが一番よ。私はそれがこのお店だっただけ。
I wondered if I drowned myself in detective work to drive away my own loneliness. I lay in my futon as I stared up at the ceiling. Toko's words had been haunting me like a phantom ever since I'd returned home. No, ever since we'd parted ways at the park. Those who don't realize they're lonely are the most pitiful beings out there, huh? Yukiko. I closed my eyes and envisioned her face from long, long ago. That bashful look she gave me whenever she told me we were going to have a baby. She remained the same in my memories and always would. Meanwhile, I kept getting older and older. Am I lonely?
Yukiko.
She'd been brutally murdered. I never even saw what her face looked like in death. Why? Why her of all people? If those who didn't realize they were lonely were pitiful, then what did that say about the last 6 years I'd lived? I saw a sliver of the moon the moment I looked up. It faintly shone red as if it were a weeping eye. Well, I'm very glad that we decided to talk to Yukiko, because that was some... to Yukiko. To Toko, because that was some very insightful character diving there. Much to my displeasure, I ended up not sleeping a wink. I'd hoped a good night's sleep would wash away some of the pain, but my melancholy had other plans. I heard the living room phone ringing. God, who'd be calling at the crack of dawn?
はい、時坂でございます。あ、はい、今起きてきましたので代わりますね。
Yukari glanced my way with the phone in hand.
俺か？
ええ、魚住さんからです。
If he was calling this early in the morning, that usually boded ill. So I steeled myself and took the phone from Yukari.
俺だ。どうした？
おお、レジ、大変だぜ。また出やがったぞ。
事件か？
ああ、今度は着地だ。ついさっき発見されたばかりで詳しいことはわからねえが、どうも続いているみたいだぞ。
Wait, does he mean?
わかった。すぐに行く。
お、じゃあ後でな。
I hung up the phone and turned to Yukari, who'd been closely watching me.
悪いが、佐伯教頭に伝えておいてくれ。今日は学院に行けそうにないと。
ええ、わかりました。
Yukari shot me a worried glance.
気をつけてくださいね。
ああ、心配するな。
Shakuji was only about a half hour away. I had to get dressed and head on over. Okay. Well, let's get this done with. Shakuji Castle ruins, huh? Uzomi waved me over the second our eyes met.
続いているってのはどういう意味だ？
そう流行るなよ。まだ鑑識もついたばかりで何も調べちゃいねえんだ。ただ発見時の状態から見てそう判断しただけだ。
バラバラか？
いや、もう一件の方だ。右腕が切られていて、腹には縫い跡があるらしい。
Okay, so this one's more of a direct correlation to the graveyard one then.
あとは現場を見て判断してくれ。
こいつは。
Jesus Christ. The girl with the inverted head's hollow eye socket was staring off into space. That was my first impression of the body. What kind of twisted mind would do something like this? let alone dream it up. No. Mulling over that could wait. Inspecting the crime scene for evidence came first. Jesus, this one looks kind of brutal. Alright, let's check around first. We'll start from the right. The body was seated against a stone wall.
どうだ？
どうだとは言われてもな。発見時の状況は？
早朝に散歩していた近所の老人が見つけたらしい。その時から遺体は全く動かしていないそうだ。
Uzomi confirmed the information with a nearby forensics officer. So an old guy passed by and happened to find it.
遊歩道沿いだからずっと放置されていたとは考えられない。おそらく夜のうちにここへ遺棄したんだろう。
当然ここで殺したわけではないか。
There was no blood spatter to be found around the body. Okay, let's move down here then. I figured that about did it for this area. I just want to be absolutely thorough on this. Yeah, okay. Alright. It seemed the body had been mantled in a black cloth.
こいつは後でかけたのか。
I asked a nearby forensics officer.
いえ、発見時からそのままだそうです。
そうか。
It seemed that was the only scrap of decency she'd been given. A young woman, huh? It seemed I'd have to take a closer look. Let's do it. Jesus Christ. Okay, let's start checking her out. Start with the head. The corpse's head had been twisted backward. A dried trail of blood ran down her cheek from her left eye socket, where her eye must have been crushed. Not from her left, but from her eye socket. Yeah, no, this is the one we saw, where we had to listen to that fucked up, like, audio of her spine snapping. Jesus. Okay.
なんだってこんな真似を。
わからんよ。意味がないわけではないだろうが。
前にあった足に火がつけられていたのと同じ理屈か？
Even if it seemed pointless to us, it must have been pretty important to the killer. Otherwise, they never even put in the effort to twist her head. Yeah, if I remember from that scene, so long ago now, I'd have to remember. I forget why the killer did that. Or if it was just like a thing that they just did. I don't, as far as I remember, I could be completely wrong about this. I don't think there's any like necessarily specified special reason for it. Okay, one thing that puzzled me was whether a human truly could have twisted her neck with their bare hands, and so cleanly at that. I was no expert, but it seemed impossible. Okay, maybe you check her eye? No. Maybe the cloth. The body in Inokashira Park was also wrapped in black cloth. There must have been some significance to that. The right arm was missing.
前のは左腕がなかったの。
ああ。見たところ同じ凶器とは言い切れんが、まあ同じような状態で切断されているな。
腕は見つかっていないんだよな。
ああ。
Uzomi shook his head. There was some sort of wound on her back. It seemed like something had clawed into her. Based on how recent the wound looked, it had probably been inflicted during the murder. Oh yeah, that slash right there. The corpse was seated cross-legged. It seemed I'd have to take a closer look. I unfurled the cloth and looked at the abdomen. Uzomi had been right. There was an incision that had been sloppily stitched shut with a thick thread, and I had a good idea what we'd find in there.
夏目さんのところに頼めるか。
まあ、そうなるだろうな。
Checked elsewhere. Is there anyone else to check? Oh. A study of the corpse's face revealed something was stuffed in her mouth.
魚住、鑑識員を呼んでくれ。こいつを取ってもらう。
Wouldn't be good if I leaped before I looked and got my fingerprints all over the thing after all.
おう、 ちょっとこっちに来い。
お呼びでしょうか。
この口の中に入っているものを取ってくれないか。
了解しました。
The gloved forensics officer expert reached into the corpse's mouth. He retrieved what appeared to be a notebook scrap.
何か書かれているな。
Uzomi's observation caught my attention.
どれ？
What I found were the following handwritten sentences. Of a new pain behoves me to make verses and give material to the 20th canto of the first song, which is of the submerged. Surely this is one of those things where like the capital letters mean something, right? E-P-A-O-E Ipeoeto Vesagivmo. Yeah, I don't think that means anything. I was already thoroughly disposed to peer down into the uncovered depth, which bathed itself with the tears of agony. And people saw I through the circular valley, silent and weeping, coming at the pace which in this world the Lightanies assume. Slower down my sight descended on them. Wondrously, each one seemed to be distorted from chin to the beginning of the chest. For towards the reins the countenance was turned, and backward it behoved them to advance, as to look forward had been taken from them. Well, considering how much it's talking about not being able to look forward and all this shit, it accounts for the head being turned around. A poem, maybe? For towards the reins the countenance was turned. If that wasn't a perfect description of the body, I don't know what was. In any case, I had to make a note of it. I think we're done, right? I don't think there's anything else. I just want to make absolutely sure I'm not missing anything. Click on her eye again, maybe the little hair, her mouth again, her neck. Alright, I think that's all we got. Right? I mean, sure, but there's no way there's anything else to check. Let's just make absolutely sure. I mean, I think that's... Yeah, then we just gotta wait on Natsume for details. Because I can't think of anywhere else. I think we're gonna end it there.
今のところはこのくらいか。
I'd have to wait on the autopsy for further insight.
じゃあ運んでくれ。
Uezomi issued orders to the forensics officer.
どうだ、レイジ。
多摩霊園で見つかったのと同じに思えるな。
Sure does. The victim back then had been one Kei Koizumi. Her body had been uncannily similar to this one. The severed arm, the stitched abdomen, the bizarre positioning of the corpse. They were all far too much alike.
同一犯だとしたら、またお前の仕事が増えるな。
仕事しろよ、警察。
He did know this sort of stuff typically wasn't left to detectives, didn't he?
まずは身元の確認だな。今度のは顔もほぼそのままだから調べやすいだろう。
じゃあ俺は、そうだな。夏目さんのところにでも顔を出すとするか。
解剖の結果はまだ出ねえだろ。
分かってるよ。話をしに行くだけさ。
I'm gonna go run to the restroom again. This got me hyped up. am back. I have returned. Alright. I followed the truck with the corpse in it over to Takadano Baba. Fuck that name.
はいはい、ちゃっちゃと
Hello.
運んでくれやす。
You know, next thing we know, we got teachers fucking students and morgue directors fucking dead bodies. Alrighty. Bring that bad boy over here. Chop, chop. Natsume was out issuing orders to the forensics
お
officers.
はようございます夏目さん。
おはようさ。時坂はも来たんね。
ええお聞きしたいこともあったんで。
さよか。ほな、仏さんばらしながら話しようか。
それは勘弁してください。
Natsume and I filed in the autopsy room while the body was taken elsewhere.
おいで。何が聞きたいん？
今回の遺体は見ましたか？
I was curious about her initial impressions.
ちらっとな。あれは同じやね。お腹縫っとる感じがそっくりやし。ただ手慣れてきたっちゅう印象は受けるね。
そうですか。
あとは首ですな。あないなことする意味がわからへん。まあそれ言うたら前の足を燃やしてたんもわからんけどな。
それも共通点だと思いますか？
まあ同じっちゅうたら同じかもしれまへんな。
So even she had the same opinion as I did, huh? Suddenly, the door opened, revealing the forensics officer I saw at the crime scene.
遺体の遺留品もこちらに置いておきます。
なんや、そんなんこっちに放られてもあかんで。
は
ちょっと待ってくれ。それは遺体の口に入っていた紙切れかな。
I stopped the forensics officer when I saw the envelope he was carrying.
あ、はい、そうですけれど。
見せてくれないか。
I stared at the piece of scrap the officer placed on the desk.
なんをすそれ。
被害者の口腔内に入れられていたものです。
なんか女の子の字みたいをすな。
そう思いますか？
Natsume nodded to herself before she continued.
筆跡鑑定したら何かわかるんとちゃいます？
筆跡鑑定、頼めますか？
比較する標本がないと無理ですよ。
標本か。誰がこれを書いたのか。
So a female has potentially been put forward.
一連の被害者の資料でしたらこちらに揃っていますから、集められるのでしたらそれ以外の方をお願いします。
Ooh, designate my own candidates or leave it up to forensics. Okay, well, we're definitely saving there. No way we're not gonna save there. So, we can designate our own candidates. So anybody we might have a suspicion about, or leave it up to forensics. Ooh. Okay, I'm gonna say this. It's interesting to note was written by potentially written by a female, right? It's not really surprising. I've kind of had an inkling. I've kind of had an idea that, I mean, you know, it's probably a woman we're dealing with. It's just kind of been like in the back of my mind. Now, of course, you know, who knows? But because it could have been somebody completely else who wrote this note. So it'll be very interesting to see where this leads. But as for whether I'm going to designate my own candidates or leave it up to forensics, I mean, it's like what forensics said. They don't really, you know, it doesn't hurt to designate my own.
では、こちらで何人か心当たりがある人間を当たってみます。
まず誰の標本を手に入れるか決めといた方がええんちゃいます？多分3人くらいですやろけど。
You know what? I know who it is. It's gotta be Yukari. 3, huh? Okay. Alright, let's start going through our list, eh? So, let's start off with Kyoko Hazuki. She has so far had absolutely no connection to any of these girls. I'm not gonna completely rule her out. She is on our character list after all, but I really don't think it's her, so we're gonna move on. Next, our very own Yukari Tokisaka. I really just don't think she would even have the capabilities of doing this. Not even to mention the time, right? I mean, she'd be having to sneak out, you know, from us. Like we live together. We're not always like in the same house, but definitely think that there's no way. Toko, unironically, a very likely candidate. Although I will admit that I don't know. I just feel like she doesn't play that role in this story. Clearly, she plays a pretty big role in it, but I don't think she plays the role of the killer. Now, who knows? We might have it twisted to, on our heads. Moonworld's newest employee worked as a servant for Yukishiro and Ueno's red light district. Don't think it's her. Yui Nishizono, she disappeared. I'm pretty sure Nishizono was the one who just up and left without leaving any fingerprints. We'll throw her in there. Kazuna Takashito, no. Orihime, nah, no way. Nene Akazaki, I really hate to put her in there, but seeing as she clearly has more than just a teacher-student relationship, and from what it seems like, this is like a recurring, often common thing for her to have, do, right? Like, hey man, majority of the time with these kinds of murders, they say, oh, it's somebody they know, right? Even further than that, one of the first people that are usually suspected are people who they've had intimate relationships with. If that's going to be anybody, it's going to be Nene. So I'm going to throw her on there. The other Toko, she's a weird little nut, and personally, she's on the top of my list. But we'll see what other people we have to work with here. Tojiko. There's just no connection, even possibly related. So I'm gonna ignore that one. Ayumu. She does have a connection with them. She was friends with them. But I just don't think it's possible that it could be her is the thing. No. I don't think it's gonna be her. Because I think that I don't know, she doesn't have motive. The only connection that's there is that she knows them. And she does seem genuinely pretty distraught over it, so. Stella, no, I'm not going to throw her in there. And neither am going to put Toko's mom. So I think these are our people right here.
このくらいでいいか。
ほいなら明日までに頼みます。うちから鑑識に回しときますさかい。
Alrighty then, get into me by tomorrow.
わかりました。
All that was left was to ask the candidates in question were those connected to them for their samples.
にしてもなんやろな、この決体なシーみたいなのは。
It seemed Natsume found it curious too.
すなわち顔は背に向かい。この仏さんそのままやないか。
そうなんですよ。
なんかの詩集にでも載っとるんですやろか。
That's definitely worth looking into there.
詩集
20th canto of the first song. Something about that rang a bell. A poem anthology. If a new pain behoves me to make verses and give material.
そんな言葉がある詩集が。
I'd have to check once I got home.
あとは何かあります？
Natsume snapped me out of my reverie.
そうですね。バラバラしたいのことですけど。
Once we get home.
本当に
Hold up.
今村遥ではないんですか？
I was about to say, watch that we get home, we take out our little poem book to like look up the poem, and we see that little page has been ripped out. It turns out it was Yukari all along, right under our noses.
うちはその子やと思うてるんけどな。よそがちゃう言うたんやろ。 指紋かって腐っとってよう判断できひんと思うんやけどな。
She didn't seem very happy about her verdict being overturned.
夏目さん、思っていたんですけど、
There we go. He's on to the right
頭
track.
部とその他が別人だという可能性はありませんか？
The body was dismembered, so it didn't seem all that implausible.
別人って誰やねん。そない仏さんは余っとらへんやん。
あくまでも可能性の話ですよ。そうですね。
I flipped open my notebook and pointed out their name. Oh, we're here? Okay. Victims. Oh shit, oh, we're cooked. I wasn't paying attention. Okay, so Haruka Imamura is who she identified based off of the jaw structure. Yui Nishizono went missing around the same time as her. So I think that's kind of what they're insinuating I'm supposed to point at here. Kei Koizumi, they found the entire body except the left arm, I believe. With this newest body that we found, it was everything aside from the right arm, which was missing. So we're clearly pointing at Yui here.
西園由衣の腕だという可能性はどうでしょうか？
まだ見つかってへん娘さんやったね。
Natsume stared off and thought.
もしかしたら頭部も彼女なのかもしれません。
かもしれへんな。まだ仏さんは監察医務院にあるやろし、もう一丁調べてみまひょか。
Thank you, Natsume.
お願いします。
今んとこはこんなもんですやろか。ほなうちは解剖に入るさかい、時坂藩も頑張りな。
ええ、お時間を取らせてしまってすみません。
ええんよ。その借りは後でじっくり返してもらうさかい。
A chill of abject terror swept over me, accompanied by the blood-curdling premonition that I'd be drier than a desert by the time I was done repaying her. What's that mean, huh?
じゃあ、また来ます。というわけなんだが。
妙な事件だな。
I'd gone to visit Takashiro at his agency in Ueno and give him an abridged summary of the case. Though I knew I shouldn't be breaching confidentiality, I figured picking a brother-in-arm's brain would be more productive than wrestling with the matter by myself. Then again, it was Natsume who'd given me the idea, so maybe I should have thought this through.
バラバラに足が燃えていたのに、首がねじ曲げられていたんだろ？全部同一犯なのか？
いや、バラバラだけは不明だ。他の2件に関してはほぼ同一犯と断定できるだろうがね。
3件の共通点は同年代の少女というところか。他にはないのか？
The only other thing they had in common was the black egg. Technically also the black cloth, but... the black cloth... Shinzo, Black Madonna. I wouldn't really use this either, because... Nah, there's nothing concrete there. Crimson Course. It's either going to be the black egg or the cloth. Oh, well, the rumor is a part of that also. I'm going to save here just in case. My primary reason for wanting to save there is just because, like, he's saying, like, oh, what else do they have in common? Well, so far, the black egg. That's, like, our biggest piece. Other than that, the black cloth is what solidly ties all of them together. But then again, it's like, oh, what else ties them together? A black cloth. Oh, okay, cool. Like, I'll try the black cloth. We'll see what he says.
そういえば、 すべての遺体には黒い布がかけられていたな。
The first victim's arms were found in one. The second victim's body was blanketed in one. And the third victim's corpse was swathed in one.
全部同じ素材なのか？
いや、そこまでは調べていないと思うが。
Wait. Black cloth and a black egg. I'd heard a rumor about them before, hadn't I? I flipped through my notebook. There we go. Well, if we're talking specifically about the rumor, it's this. Right.
黒い卵を身につけて割れなければ願いが叶うが、割れた場合には黒い聖母がやってきて殺される。
I had a feeling the black claws has something to do with this mysterious Black Madonna.
黒い聖母に殺されるねえ。割れた黒い卵ってのは被害者の腹に入っていたやつなのか？
そう考えればしっくりくる。
The rumor said you'd be killed for breaking your egg. Then was the Black Madonna the killer?
黒い聖母が犯人だというのは論理が飛躍しているだろうか。
黒ずくめの女なのかもしれないな。
女？
I deliberated the possibility that our culprit was a woman. Natsume told me that Kei Koizumi's death wasn't a rape murder despite the body exhibiting traces of sexual activity, meaning a female killer wasn't out of the question. Alright guys, I think this is coming full circle. Kei Koizumi. Now granted, right? Let's pull up our notes real quick. Hold up. Where's Kei Koizumi at? So Kei Koizumi was a student. I don't believe she went to our girls' academy here, though. She went to a different school. However, traces... We're getting a lot of potential hints that we have a female killer on the loose. In addition to the fact that we've just now come by the revelation that one Dr. Akazaki is engaging in illicit sexual activity with her students. I'm just saying, there's a possibility. I'm throwing it out there, right? There was traces of sexual action, but we may be pointing towards a female killer, the Black Madonna, the feminine writing on the note we got. I'm not gonna say anything, but it's there. Definitely it's there. Anyways, we're gonna move on here. After all, it's not like a woman's incapable of dismembering a body or anything. Hell, a man had been found chopped up in the Arakawa drainage canal just 4 years ago, and the killers there had been his wife and mother-in-law.
それにしても懐かしいな。お前とこういう風に頭を使うのは。
Takeshido suddenly changed the subject.
そうだな。もうこういうことはないと思っていたんだが。
Not after our police days, anyway.
あの事件以来だな。
やめてくれ、その話は。
Unfortunately, my mind couldn't help but flash back to that atrocious case 6 years ago. My face scrunched as I tried to block out those serial killings that ended in Yukiko's murder.
だが、今回の事件、話を聞いていると、あの時の六式事件と似ているような気がするんだが。
Despite my reluctance to breach the subject, Takeshiro remained undeterred.
腹を裂かれ、一部が欠損した遺体。まるであの時の。
頼む、やめてくれ。しろ。
I didn't want to hear another word. The thought of recalling Yukiko's death was like a knife to my heart. God, I had been such a wreck since yesterday.
悪い。
Takeshido finally backed off.
もしも奴が六式誠がこの件に絡んでいるのだとしたら、俺は絶対に奴を許さない。
Makoto Rokushiki, the man who murdered Yukiko. His face was a total enigma. All I had to go off was his name. But if he ever dared to appear before me, I'd...
落ち着けよ。今はこの事件に集中しよう。な。
I knew that, but my fist simply refused to unclench. Alright, where to first? Okay, very, very interesting. Ueno Station. Takeshiro Clinic, Girls Ueno Station? That's the first time we've actually been able to go there. But, I would like to say, interesting. So, and you know, now we're kind of presenting the possibility this Makoto Rokushiki guy is potentially the one behind this. And we don't know all the details yet, but maybe it's not even actually a guy. Maybe it's a girl. You know, Makoto's not... well, I don't know. I'm not Japanese, you know. So, but it does... it sounds like a pretty unisex name. So, you know, I'm just saying, the possibilities are there, especially if he's saying that some of these patterns are lining up. Okay. So we already passed by the clinic to ask her. Let's go back to Obagirls. I arrived at Obagirls Academy. I checked the art room and spotted Toko and Toko right away. Toko noticed me first. Toko was too busy drawing something on her canvas.
ちょっといいかな。
何でしょうか。
Toko didn't even bother to hide her wariness.
君たちの筆跡を取らせてもらいたいんだが。
Oh, I completely forgot I needed the fucking... Okay.
筆跡？何に使うんですか？
Toko's face hardened.
心配しなくても大丈夫。筆跡鑑定をするにあたって標本がいくつか欲しいだけだから。
どうして私たちなんですか？何か事件と関わりがあるんですか？
君たちを疑っているわけじゃない。ただ若い女性の筆跡を集めているだけさ。
でもいいじゃないかトウコ。時坂先生に協力しても。
Toko broke her silence and looked at me. Dude, oh god, this relationship reminds me of something. Well, one thing it reminds me of is fucking me, Maho and Erica from Girls in Panzer. Just like one of them filled with like animosity, yet the other one immediately fucking shuts him down. Toko broke her silence and looked at me.
私のも必要なのかな先生。
ああ、頼めるか。
もちろん。さあ、トウコも書きたまえ。
Toko reluctantly scribbled something down.
はい先生。これでいいのかな？
ああ、ありがとう。ではまた明日。
I placed her samples in my notebook and left the art room.
あら、時坂先生、今頃ご出勤ですか？
本業が忙しいんですよ。
Nene and I traded those quips once I stepped into the infirmary.
あら、何か事件があったのかしら？
ええ、まあ。それよりも協力していただきたいことがあるんですが。
ええ、私にできることでしたら。
I took out a pencil and a piece of paper.
こちらに何か文字を書いていただけますか？
何でもいいのかしら？
そうですね。漢字をいくつかと、カタカナも何文字か。
これでいいかしら？
Nene finished and returned the paper to me.
ええ、ありがとうございます。
私が何かの事件で疑われているのかしら？
いえ、そうじゃありませんよ。今は標本を集めているんです。
そう？どちらにせよ、あまり良い気分ではないわね。
すみません。これが俺の仕事なんで。
ええ、分かっているわ。
Nene charitably shook her head in response to my sincere apologies. I spotted a familiar face by the gates.
いや、佐藤さん。
時坂先生。
Ayumu greeted me with a bow.
ちょうどよかった。佐藤さん、ちょっと協力を頼めますか？
協力？
何か西園さんの筆跡がわかるものを持っていないかな？
ゆいのですか？やり取りしていた手紙でしたらありますけれど。
Ayumu pulled out an envelope from her bag.
これですけど、ゆいを探す手がかりになるんですか？
まだ断言はできないけれどね。
そうですか。でもお願いします、先生。
Ayumu bowed her head as she entreated me to save her friend.
俺も精一杯努力するから俺を信じてほしい。
はい、わかりました。
今日は部活は休みなのかい？
いえ、そういうわけではないんですが、体調が悪くて。
ああ、そうか。それなら無理しない方がいい。
Maybe that might be some of that sickness or whatever that has supposedly been going around.
はい、それでは失礼します。
She bowed again before trudging off. I decided to take a leaf out of her book and get going myself. I think that was very productive, surprisingly. I completely forgot about needing the samples, by the way. So, I mean, that was really all we needed from Toko, Akazaki, and Yui. That was all we needed. Ueno Station is kind of calling out to me, though, because I don't think we've ever been over there. Huh. Fuck it. Let's go. I arrived at Ueno. It seemed the art museum was still closed. However, a familiar voice called out to me as I was pondering my next move. I turned to face the sound of the droll voice.
奇遇ですね、カズナさん。
こんなところで何をなさっているんですか？
ちょっと美術館に用事があったんですが、まだ閉まっているようですね。
へえ、時坂さんは美術にも興味があるんですか？
妹が美術部でして、その付き合いですよ。
それでもすごいですよ。うちの人ったら天然劇に興味を示さないんですもん。
Kazuna inflated her cheeks.
今日だってお友達の公演があったのに忙しいからって断ったんですよ。
仕事をしていたんだと思いますよ。
あ、でも私の公演には来てくれるんですよ。ちゃんと初演と千秋楽と毎回花束まで持ってきてくれるんです。
暇だったんじゃないですか。
I had no time to listen to her getting all mushy about that guy.
そういえば、カズナさんはこう見えても有名な女優だったんですよね。
こう見えてもって。
You're playing to a fault, but still amazing. You're a basket case. I feel like both of those are kind of bad, aren't they? What would get us in less trouble? Probably not calling her crazy, right?
カズナさんは素朴で親しみやすいじゃないですか。今、
それっていいことなんでしょうか？
Kazuna stared at me like she didn't know whether to be offended or flattered.
いいことだと思いますよ。みんなその素朴さに惹かれているのでしょうから。
そうですか。照れちゃうな。
Talk about a happy-go-lucky ditz. Not that there's anything wrong with that, of course.
それじゃあ時坂さん、また今度。
Kazuna waved goodbye as she went on her way. I finally made it back home. Yukari was probably worried since I'd been out investigating from the crack of dawn and all.
おかえりなさい、兄さん。
Yukari ran up to me with concern etched deeply into her countenance, just as I'd feared.
ああ、ただいま。
疲れたでしょう、兄さん。夕飯の前にお風呂が沸いていますから入ってきてください。
そうさせてもらうよ。
I changed into a kimono and returned to my room after enjoying a nice long soak, still waiting on dinner. In the meantime, I sat back and puffed on a cigarette.
兄さん、夕飯ができましたよ。
そうだ。ちょっと協力してくれないか。
I had a favor I needed to ask her.
すぐ終わることでしたら構いませんよ。
そうか。じゃあ、これを見てくれ。
Excuse me. I showed Yukari the sentences recorded in my notebook.
これは詩ですか？
おそらくな。俺もどこかで見た覚えはあるんだが。
新たなる刑罰を死に編み、第20の罪となす。兄さん、これは確か。
わかるのか？
題名は失念してしまいましたが、確か地獄を巡ってゆく海外のお話だったような。
Yukari furrowed her brows and struggled to remember.
そうか。
It was a pretty famous one too, wasn't it? I don't know! Dante's Divine Comedy, Ryunosuke Akutagawa's Hell Screen, or Goth's Faust. I don't fucking know. I'm not well versed in this poetic literature. What do you think I am? Alright, you know what? I'm gonna be completely unashamed here, and I'm searching this up. I don't care. Let's see if we can find this. Well, first off, she said it was a foreigner. So it's gotta either be Divine Comedy or Goth's Faust. It's not gonna be some guy named fucking Ryunosuke. Let's see. We'll try Divine Comedy first, see what that pulls up. A lot of... Yeah, right. A Guide to the Nine Circles of Hell. Dante's Inferno, Divine Comedy. Right? That's what I would think it is, because she said it was a foreigner's story about a journey to hell. We'll check Goth's Faust, though, just to make sure. It's a tragedy about the human ambition. He makes a pact with the devil. So it's kind of similar. I'm more inclined to say it's Dante's Inferno, though. That makes more sense to me. I'm gonna go with Divine Comedy. I gotta remember. Oh, I can pull up my notes. Let's do this, and then we want to go to the investigation, right? Title, Thomas Cemetery, evidence list, poem scrap. Let's try and search that up, maybe. Of a new pain, behoves me to make verses and give material to the 20th canto of the first song. And Dante's Inferno. Yep. So that's what we're going with.
新曲か。
そうです。ダンテの新曲です。
Also, fucking, yeah, I'm not gonna sit here and just guess on that, alright? This is important shit! I'm gonna act like I knew that and didn't have to spend 5 minutes searching it up. Fuck you.
そうか。確かにあれは第何曲というように章が分けられている。第20曲の在。
I'd have to check the copy in the library later. I went to the library after having dinner with Yukari. It was dark, so I flipped on the lights and delved through a shelf of brown paperbacks until I found it. The book in question was wrapped in paraffin paper.
こいつか。
Dante's Divine Comedy. I should have realized the connection right away. After all, this one hadn't been left to me by my parents. I'd bought it myself.
すぐに気づくべきだったな。
But that was all in the past now. Deciphering this came first. I lounged back in my chair and opened the book. Once I'd gotten comfortable, I flipped over to the 20th canto, where I believed I'd find the passage in question.
新たなる刑罰を死にやみ、これを第一の歌沈める者を歌の内なる感と第20の罪となすべき時は至れり。
I'd found it. It was the exact same sentence and everything.
すなわち顔は後ろに向かい、彼ら前を望むあたわで。
Chills shuddered through me. The passage really was a perfect match for the body. However, that wasn't all.
読者よこう、今自ら思え、目の涙、背筋を伝えて。
The weeping of the eyes, that's why her eyes were missing. That part hadn't been on the excerpt of the crime scene. Even so, it described tears running down from the eyes of the damned and trailing down their back, exactly like the blood on the victim's body. If so, did that mean the states of the other corpses also alluded to passages in this book? I skimmed through to see if anything described in the novel matched the corpses with the burned foot. And quickly found something in Kanto, whatever the fuck that is. Simony was the sin of buying or selling sacred objects, and those who committed such a crime were damned to have their feet set on fire. In that case, what was the sin of those whose head had been reversed? I flipped back to Kanto 20 and kept reading. Put simply, fortune tellers were punished for dabbling in witchcraft. Maybe one of the victims had committed a similar crime. Huh. So, witchcraft and buying something sacred. The victims were young, so maybe it was one of their family members, parents or siblings who committed those sins. My attention was drawn to a soft knock on the door.
Nii-san, coffeeをどうぞ.
Yukari entered the library.
ありがとう。
あまり無理しないでくださいね。
心配するなよ。それほど無茶はしていないさ。
だといいのですけど。
俺はもうしばらくここで調べ物をしているから、先に寝てていいからな。はい、
わかりました。おやすみなさい、兄さん。
I needed to keep going down this rabbit hole. I'd finally discovered that 2 of the corpses were connected to the Divine Comedy. But what of the first? What of the ones who had been reduced to nothing but a head and limbs? Maybe there was something in this book that pertained to that as well. Now that I thought about it, there was something in particular about the body that corroborated that theory. I don't know, motherfucker. The missing torso, the swarm of maggots, or the rotten flesh. Well, I will say that that body was far more decomposed than either of these other 2. So much so to the point that we have pretty much yet to confidently identify it. I'm still of the opinion that these are kind of like multiple body parts that he had lying around and didn't need anymore, that he just kind of dumped out, right? So all of 3 of these things stand out about that body. We'll start with the rotten flesh, though. The rotten flesh, I think, could even just be attributed to it's the first kill. Maybe. Again, at the very least, this stuff had been sitting around a while. I don't want to jump to the conclusion and say that it was even a part of anything, but yeah, I don't want to jump to the conclusion and say that it was even like a part of anything in this book, but we have to operate on the assumption it was. The rotten flesh, I'm not very confident in. I think that it's a first kill, so they hadn't really gotten quite into their groove yet, which clearly now they are. So I don't think it's the rotten flesh. The missing torso, I think, had less to do with one of the Kantos and more to do with the killer collecting body parts. The swarm of maggots is the one that stands out the most because, according to the forensic analysis, or at least whatever we said about it, the maggots that were there would have had to have been placed there after the fact, because it was something about them, they were such and such weeks old, but the body had only died, a week ago or something like that. So I'm going to go with the maggots. Come to think of it, Natsume had mentioned that the maggots in the corpses were far too old. She said something about how they didn't match up with the body's state of decay. In that case, maybe they'd been planted there intentionally. And if so, the killer wouldn't have just done it for no reason. With that thought in mind, I raked through the book. Eventually, a passage in Kanto 3 caught my eye. It corresponded if you interpreted maggots as baby gadflies and hornets. In that case, what sin had merited that punishment?
この幸なき様にあるは恥もなく誉れもなく世を送れる者らの悲しき魂なり。
It was the punishment for those who lived without lifting a finger, the sin of sloth. Though it was enough to form a connection to the first murder, it was by no means definitive. And yet, the latter two corpses pretty clearly appeared to have been inspired by Dante's Divine Comedy.
新曲にはない特徴もあるか。
The black egg. The broken one that had been left in place of the victim's uterus. Could this be a reference to something else? The black egg and the Black Madonna. The rumors stated that your wish would be granted if you kept the black egg on you without breaking it, but also that you'd be killed by the Black Madonna if you broke it. Or that was what Tojiko had heard anyway. Maybe I need to research this Black Madonna some more. If I had to guess, it probably had something to do with Christianity. However, scouring for it would be like trying to find a needle in a haystack. There were just too many books out there associated with the religion in question. Needless to say, that included the Old and New Testaments, and even the Divine Comedy that was about the journey through the Christian afterlife.
トジコが噂で聞いたということは、出所は女学生か。
Now, what kind of books did young women read?
さすがにそっちの分野は疎いからな。
I'd start with the school library, personally. Right? I decided to just bum around school tomorrow and see how much I could get out of people without rousing suspicion. However, I knew I needed to get the autopsy results from Natsume first.
もう少し調べるか。
I procured a weathered Bible off one of my bookshelves and decided to skim through it as I drank my coffee. Well, I sure hope I was right about the Kanto thing. I'm thinking I was fairly... I'm kind of confident.
夜は好きだ。明かりの消えた街。星空がとてもよく見えて。何もない夜はこうして何も考えず、ただ星を眺めていく。
兄さん、こんなところで寝ていると風邪ひきますよ。
We're gonna go ahead and save right there. Bam. It probably wouldn't have been a bad idea to save at that other point, but whatever. We're gonna go ahead and stop there. Then exit the title. Okay. So, some pretty big things happening. Yet again, we have encountered, unfortunately, another body. So, clearly the killer now has a pretty definitive MO, right? Targets young women, takes out their uterus, puts a black egg inside, takes at least one body part from them, horribly mutilates them in relation to a section out of Dante's Inferno, and then leaves them displayed in some relative fashion along with the black cloth. I think, and then obviously, we have all this stuff worrying about with it potentially being a female killer. We have the potential of it being this Makoto, whatever it is, who killed our wife. And then obviously we have this black egg rumor kind of going around, so we're also gonna have to get to the bottom of that. I don't think it would be too hard to get to, well, the only reason it would be hard to get to the bottom of the black egg story is just because of the social atmosphere of the school, because it seems like it's only known by a few select people, so I don't think it'd be necessarily hard to get an understanding of who knows what, and like who may have even started it. But it's just getting that information out of the students in the first place is going to be what's difficult. But again, that's maybe where we could step in and ask Akazaki, because she is very intimately familiar with these students. Anyway, I think that's all we really got right now. A lot of big puzzle pieces, but nowhere really to necessarily connect them quite yet. So we're going to go ahead and stash that in our little box here. And that's going to be it for this time. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like on the video and tell me in the comment section below what you'd like to see me play next. If you enjoyed this video or any other videos or series on my channel, then I highly recommend that you hit the subscribe button and turn on post notifications so you'll be notified when a new one of those videos comes out. Anyways, that's it from me, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace!